Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Columns, Beams, and Lumber webinar. My name is Nick, and I will be doing the presentation with you today. Just like all of our previous webinars, everybody will be on mute, but if you do happen to have any questions at any point during our class, please feel free to go ahead and type that into the questions and answers section in the Zoom panel, and at the end of the class, I will go through and answer any questions that may have come up. Also, at the end of the class, I will be sending out an email that will contain a document that covers everything that we're going to be talking about in today's class. Should you happen to have any questions while going over that document, you are able to contact our support department and they will be happy to help you out with any questions. Again, today's class is on columns, beams, and lumber, and my name is Nick. So in today's class, we're going to review how to insert columns, beams, and random pieces of lumber that may be used in a plan apart from your regular framing routines. In today's class, we're going to be looking at how to insert columns. We're going to be looking at creating a beam element, and we're also going to be looking at inserting members. So first, let's talk about columns. Now, you can use the column tool to insert a variety of wood, concrete, steel, brick, and gypsum columns in various shapes and sizes. Once these columns are inserted, there are many tools to help you duplicate them and make changes to their appearance. So let's insert a column, and then we're going to make multiple copies of it in our design. So as you can see on my screen, I have a design created with a roof that is overhanging to create a covered patio or a covered porch area. But we're going to need to support that roof. So let's add in some columns along that edge of the roof. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up and we're going to select, if you like to use the menu option, you can go to Insert, and then you can select Columns. If you like to use the buttons, underneath the Building tab, you will see the Columns button, and you can simply select that. Either way, whenever you select that button or select it through the menu, the catalog on the right-hand side is going to populate with all the different columns that are available to you to use in the program. Again, just like we've talked about, the catalog is completely modifiable, so you can add to this catalog, create your own columns, import custom columns if you want to. You can edit this catalog, again, to suit your design needs. I am just going to go in and I'm just going to grab the, let's use this one. We'll use this decorative column here, and I'm going to bring this into my design. And once I place it, I can insert it pretty much anywhere. And right now it's going to snap to the center of the column. So let's just snap that right to the center. And we're going to right click and we're going to select Finish. Now, once the column has been inserted, I can adjust exactly where I want this column to sit. And I can do this in a couple of ways. I can take the column and I can manually just move it. So I can go right click, move. I can find a point that I want to move it from, and I can snap it to that point. Alternatively, I can also select the column and I can use the arrow keys on my keyboard to move that column a set distance. If I go up to Settings, Document Settings, and I go to, Settings, Program Settings, and I go to the Drawing Aids tab, I will have the Nudge Distance option. So again, under Settings, Program Settings, Nudge Distance, anytime I press my arrow key left, right, up, or down, it will move that element 1 inch. If I hold the Control key down and I press those same arrow keys, it will move that selected object 1 foot in the direction selected. So if I want to move this column, as an example, up 3 inches, I would just press up on my keyboard 3 times. 1, 2, 3. That will move it up 3 inches. And we're going to move it to the right 3 inches. 1, 2, 3. So I'm very easily able to move a selected object very accurately using my arrow keys. Now that I have the column positioned where I want it, I can now go in and we can start to make copies of it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to have that column selected, And we can do this by simply right-clicking, and we can select the array option. When you array elements, you create multiple copies of an element at the same time. You can create an array in a single row or column, or multiple rows and columns. You can also control the spacing between the elements in the array and the array's rotation angle. We're not going to have a rotation angle in here. We're going to be basically just creating an array down in our design. So what we're going to do is we're going to be adjusting the number of rows in our design, and we're going to be also adjusting the spacing between them. So the first thing we want to make sure is we want to make sure that we are adjusting the correct option. Now, the number of rows should dictate along the vertical axis on your screen. The number of columns will go across vertically. So we're going to be creating columns will run left to right, rows will run up and down. So we want to add in how many rows, and I want there to be, let's add in 5 rows for right now. And then in between each row, we're going to go in, we're going to place these at, actually, let's cancel this. Let's just make sure we're at the same size here. So we're going to go DI on my keyboard, and that way I know exactly how far we are. So we're looking at about 31 feet, almost 32 feet. So we will do a space of 8 feet, and we're going to do 4 columns. So we're going to go array, and we're going to go 4, and we're going to go -8 feet. Now, I'm typing in a negative number because I am moving down in my screen. If I was moving to the arraying upwards, I would have a positive value. Same would be true if I was arraying left to right. If it was going to the left, it would be a negative number. To the right would be a positive number. When I say OK, it's now going to array those columns for me at that distance. If you're happy with it, you can then say finish and it will add them in. If you want to adjust it, you can just go back in. We're going to undo that. And I need to add in one extra one. So we're going to go array. We're going to go 5 rows. And we're going to do that -8 feet again, sorry. And then we're going to say OK. And that will move those around for us. Now, this was from the center line to center line. So that 32 feet was a little bit off in our measurements. So I can fine tune it. I can move these around. I can adjust their positions. I can even just go in and say, delete this one out. And I'm just going to move this one back in. So we can just go back in and say move. So you're not set in stone. You can move these around, and we can go back in and say, this one's going to be over 1, 2, we want to go back into there. And then we're going to go up 1, 2, 3. And then over 1, 2, 3. And we'll be able to line these back up with where we want. Oh yeah, I moved it from here. That's right. That's why it's not lining up. And then we're going to go and say we want to move this up 3 or down 3. So 1, 2, 3, and then over 3. There we go. So that will keep those in line. And then we can move these guys around too, depending on where we want this to go. You can also adjust the value. So if you want to have it set right to the center line to center line, you can measure that out and then divide it by 4 to get your exact dimensions on where you want this to be placed. So once you have the columns added in, you are free to move them around. And I'm just going to hold my control key down. And I'm just going to move that down 2 feet. Let's go one more. We'll go down 1 more foot, and then we'll move that guy 1 foot as well. So we'll have our new spacing for our columns along that edge. When we look at the columns themselves, you can go in and you can take a look at a 3D view of that column, and you can now see how that's starting to take shape. And we can see that column in our design. You are also able to import decorative columns into Envisioneer. Columns can be customized to a wide variety of shapes and profiles, and you can also import your columns created in DWG, DXF, 3ds, and SKP format. You can add in a column into the catalog by simply going up, and we're going to find a element to bring in. So we're going to go File, Import, and we're going to go up to the Object Wizard. And under the Object Wizard, you're able to define an element to bring in. And we're going to call this a custom column. And what we're going to do from here is we're now going to make sure we place it in the columns folder. So I want to make sure it goes into columns. This is a column, so it's going to insert on the location. So we don't need to worry about that. If I was inserting a object that was on the exterior accessories, I would have the ability to insert it on the terrain or on the location. So some controls will have the option for you to choose between the two options. Some controls will be locked to just the location. Then we can hit select, and then we can locate exactly what we want to grab. So we're going to go to our desktop and SKP files, and we're going to make sure that we go in and we select the SKP option. And then you would have to make sure you have a column somewhere on your system to bring in. And in this case, if I back up a folder, do I have a column in here? We have a column. I thought I had a column in here. Custom column, there it is. And we can say open. You're going to get the message, do you want to force the SketchUp import as single-sided? In most cases, you're going to say yes to this if it's a SketchUp block. SketchUp blocks are created with two faces, an interior face and an exterior face. That will double the size of the object as it's being inserted. So we want to make sure that we are inserting this as a single-sided object just to help reduce the file sizes. So we're going to say yes, make it single-sided. And then what you're going to see is the outline of the column itself. Now we're going to say next. This will help you orient the element. Red will be your floor. The blue or purple will be your wall. So we want to make sure that the column is obviously oriented in the right direction. So we're going to use the arrow keys here to rotate it around. If this was an odd shaped column where it was wider than it was deep, then you would be able to, again, flip it along that axis using the arrows on the side. This is a square column, so you're not going to see that rotation. We're going to say next. And now we can actually go through and start to change the name of the elements and assign actual visibility to the objects. So we're going to go in, we're going to say, we don't want to see the SketchUp edges. This was a block that I created, so I made sure that the 2D plan was on the SketchUp edges. So we're just going to call that 2D plan. And then we have the default SketchUp color, and that's going to be the main column. So you can turn the eye off to see what it is. That's going to be the column. Then we have our component 1, which will be the actual base. And then we have component 2, which is the cap that sits on top of that base. So we're going to call that cap. We can say next. And then we can control what we actually want to see in our 2D view. We don't want to see the 3D elements. We just want to see the 2D plan. If you don't have this created in this way, or if you're finding the object online, you probably won't have a 2D plan created. You can use the outline tool or the slice tool to create an outline of the block and then have that be your 2D plan view. We're going to say next and then finish. And now attached to my cursor is that column. And then in the properties, we can double click on it and we can apply different material options to create that column. So here we're going to change the 2D component. I like to use colors from the catalog. So I usually always change the 2D component to be an actual color. So I'll scroll up to colors. And I don't want to use white just because it's really hard to see. It makes it look like there's nothing there. So I just grab the next color in the list. That's the rhyme and reason why we do that. It just gives me an idea to know that, yes, something is actually selected. and I can see that that beige color is there. I'm never going to see that color, so don't worry about what color you use. Now, when it comes to the column, base, and cap, this is where we want to apply materials or actual paint colors. So for the column, let's make this um, a painted column top. So we're going to go up to the off-white. And we're just going to say seashell. We can now see that painted column top. The base, let's make this one brick. So we're going to make a brick base. And I'm just going to grab the brick base option. Now, when you import a SketchUp block, it is going to have a mapping set to be predefined. So under mapping, the texture mapping is predefined. This just means it's using whatever SketchUp had defined. And since we didn't have anything defined, it's not really scaling this or creating it in any way around that face. So let's let Envisioneer map it. So instead of being predefined, we're just going to say face. We're going to say OK, and it's going to change the mapping of that to match what Envisioneer would use. Same with the cap. We're just going to change the cap to be concrete. So I'm just going to grab the concrete colors, and we'll just do a concrete 2. And once again, we're going to change the mapping to be face. So we now have a new column in our catalog, and you can go through each of these tabs, make sure it's set up the way that you want. So we want this to be a column. And then under quantity, you can fill out the quantity information so that it has the information that you want. I'm not going to make any of those changes. And then just like that, we have that new column in our drawing. This is not in our catalog yet. To get it to save to the catalog, we have to go up to File, Catalogs, and then we can save that element to the catalog. And it will save the custom column to the catalog. Would you like to save another element? No. And it will now save that custom catalog to, or sorry, that custom column to the catalog for us. So next, I'm just going to delete this guy out. The next thing we're going to be looking at is beams and lumber. So members come in a variety of shapes and sizes and are inserted with point and click simplicity. You can customize them on the fly to achieve the precise results you want. There are multiple ways to insert members depending on how it is going to be used. So let's insert a member in 3 different ways into our design. So to create a single horizontal member, we're going to use the Members tool. So we're going to go up again. If you like to use the menu, you're going to go to Insert, Members, and you're going to select Members. If you like to use the buttons, under the Building tab, you will see the Members button. Right beside it is a drop-down. Select the drop-down and select Members. The catalog on the right-hand side, again, will populate. Again, completely modifiable. You can add or edit any one of these. We're now going to select a member, and we're going to bring it into our design. So let's grab a member, and let's insert a member in our design here. So let's grab a 2x8 member, and I'm just going to bring my mouse in. I'm going to left click once, and now attached to my cursor is that member, and I'm going to move it left, right, up, or down, and it's going to start from where I selected, and I can move my mouse in any direction. The commander at the bottom will show me the distance that that is running, as well as the rotation. So you can see the direction is changing whenever I move my mouse. I can type in a distance. If I want this to be 25 feet, I can hit 25 feet and then press enter, and that member will now be added in. The command will keep going, so it is a repeatable command, a continuous command, until you actually right click and select finish. And that's how you can insert a single member into your design. Once that member is inserted, you can open up its properties and you can adjust the way the member looks. You can also right click on an inserted member and you can elevate it. So I can go up and say, I want to elevate this member to a set height. Maybe you want to add in a multiply beam on top of our columns. So instead of just being one large beam, we're going to do a multiply beam. So what you can do there is you can go in and we can use the advanced members option. So when we want to create a multiply, again, we're going to use the advanced option to do that. And this is going to be done by, again, going to insert members, and you can do advanced members. Or underneath the drop down under the building tab, you would select the advanced members option. Now in the advanced members, we can again control a lot of different things. So this is going to be a beam material that's going to be running vertically horizontally on our screen to support the roof on top of our columns. So what we want to do is we want to, again, make sure that the slope value is set to what we want. So in this case, it's going to be flat. So it's going to be a 0-degree slope. We'll also have the ability to associate it to something. So if we want this to be a part of the roof, then you can have it set to be a part of the roof. This way, when you go to order the materials, it will show up with the roof framing options, and you'll get that beam to show up. We also want to define what type of member we're going to be adding in. So let's add in a 2x10 beam. So we're going to say a 2x10. Well, now how many members do we want? Like I said, I want this to be a ply beam. So I want this to be 3 plies. So I'm going to change the number to be 3. Now it's asking me for a reference point. Do I want to insert this from the top of the member or the bottom of the member? I'm going to say bottom. I know what the height of the column is, so I'm going to insert this from the bottom of the member. The justification is going to be center. I'm inserting it from a center line of this column or of this beam, and so we're going to leave that at center. I'm not going to rotate it or shift it. We're going to leave that as is. Under the quantity information, you can again apply a usage and a phase either from the member properties, or you can say, I want to use it as a framing member. And then here we're going to say from library, and this is going to be a part of roof framing. Sorry, framing, not finishes. There you go. And we say roof framing. So now when this is reported, it's going to show up in my quantity reports as a framing member for the roof framing phase. Now I can say insert. And actually, I want to offset this guy. We're going to say 8 feet for right now off of the ground. And we're going to say insert. And then we're just going to pick our points. And I want to insert this from here. And it's going to span all the way over to here. So we can now see our beam is now added in. And I'm just going to go into a rendered outline view. And we're going to pull our camera around, and we'll now see that column, or sorry, that beam sitting on top of our columns. You can edit this. You can stretch these beams around to place them wherever you would like in your design. But that is how you can add in a multiply beam using the advanced members option. We can also add in sloping members. So if I wanted to add in a sloping member that follows the shape of the roof, I can again use the advanced members. So this time I'm going to use the drop down beside members, and we're just going to select advanced members once again. This time, I don't want it to be flat. I want it to actually follow the slope of a known surface. So we're going to select this, and instead of being slope type, we're going to select the select plane option. It's going to be associated with the, we're going to say this is going to be associated with nothing for right now. And we're going to get rid of the offset. I'm going to say 0. I want the member to be, let's just grab a 1x6 as an example, and we'll say, okay. I want it to be 1 piece, not 3. So we're just going to make sure that that's down to 1. And we'll leave that at the top of the member. And we'll leave all of this as it is. This will be exterior finish. And we're going to say exterior finish. So this is going to be like a trim piece. We're just going to call it exterior finish. And all we have to do now is select the plane. So it's going to say select plane, none selected. So what plane do we want to select? I want to select this plane right here. So it's going to grab the 812 slope, and then we're just going to say insert. And I can go from the edge of that wall, or sorry, the edge of that roof up to the point of this roof, and we'll add in an actual member. And that went a little bit wonky on us, so let's do that again. And it should remember the selections except for the plane. No, it did select it. Okay. Top center, 1 by 8, not 2 by 8. And we're going to select 1 by 8. And we'll say insert. So again, we're going to go from the end of that wall up to here. There we go. And we can select finish. So what that has done is it's now added in that member, and we can see it on the edge of our fascia right there. So what I'm now able to do is select that member. I can go into its properties and I can start to manipulate the way that this trim piece is going to behave. So under details, it's just set to be a square cut. I want the first edge and the second edge to be plumb. So it's going to actually cut that to be plumb in our design. When I say okay, we're now going to get the plumb cut look. I can also go in and say elevate. And I can say, well, I really want this guy to sit, let's just go 7 foot 7 inches. And we'll say okay. And we're going to say okay. And it's going to drop that down. This was a 1 by 8. So I need to go a little bit lower. Elevate. We're just going to go down 2 more inches. So we'll go 7 foot 5. So it's going to lower that material down for us. And then what I can do is I can start to maneuver it around in my design. So I'm just going to say move, and I can place this so that it sits up against the wall. And now we have what would look like a frieze board in our gable ends. Once I have it positioned exactly where I want, I can probably lower this even more. So let's just go down to 7 foot 4. And we'll go and take a look at that. That's looking pretty good. So what I can do from there is back in my 2D plan view, I can stretch the material back. I can move it so that it snaps exactly to the edge, and then I can mirror it. So I can just take that piece of member and mirror it around. I don't want to delete the original. I want to keep the original. And what we'll get now is the look of that material on both edges of the gable end. And I can manually manipulate this edge so that it doesn't extend out past the edge of the wall. I just want it to extend to there, and you'll get that frieze board look in your design. These members, while I inserted them, have a rectangular shape to them. You can adjust them. So you can go into the actual properties and you can say, instead of being a rectangular solid, I want it to be a custom option. And then I can say, I want to select a profile. And I can go into like a chair rail. We can grab any one of these different options. We can go into a crown profile as well. So if we wanted something a little bit more decorative in the gable ends, you can apply something a little bit more of a different look depending on the style. And then all you have to do is say, okay, give it a correct size. So I want this to be, we'll say 2 inches deep, and we'll say 6 inches in height. And then we'll just say, okay. And what that will do is it will now adjust that member for us. And we may need to elevate this guy down. And we may also need to move it into place. So we're going to go back in here. We're going to select these two and move so that it sits like that. And then with the edit select previous, we can now see that it's showing us that profiled gable end frieze board. And again, we need to come down just a little bit. So we're going to go elevate. And we're probably going to go down to 8.5 inches. Oops. Elevate. Again, just bring that down to the height that we want. So you can, again, play around with these values. adjust them. You can change the material so it's a different color as well to again create the look of the freeze board that you're trying to create in that cable end. So that covers everything that I wanted to discuss in today's class. So I'm just going to go over a quick review. If you do happen to have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and type that into the questions and answers section of the Zoom panel, and then I will go through and answer any questions. So in today's class, we went over a couple of different ways of how to add in columns, beams, and lumber into our designs. The first thing we looked at was how to take advantage of the array command to make multiple copies of a column or a member at a set distance apart in our drawing. We also looked at the insertion of columns will be inserted at the same height as the wall of that building location. So when you insert a column, the column itself will follow the properties of the wall. So if we go back into our columns, if I was to grab just a 8-inch diameter wood column and I place it in, whatever the wall properties are, that is going to be the same height of the column itself. So in my building locations, my walls are set at 8 foot 1 and an 8. The columns will insert at 8 foot 1 and an 8. The column that we inserted was a custom block, so it has a set size to it. So when you look at the height, it is a set height, and it was 8 feet tall. These columns, again, can be set to the whatever the value of the building locations are. You can also adjust these manually. So if you want it to be an actual 8-foot column, you can type that in. Columns can be created by selecting one of the preset shapes or by importing custom geometry in a variety of different file formats. We then looked at members and how we can insert members to match the plane of a previously inserted surface, how we can apply a ply beam in our design using the advanced members tool, and how to insert just individual members that we would use to run in our designs on a vertical plane. Or sorry, on a horizontal plane. So I'm going to pause here for a moment just to see if anybody has any questions. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the class, I'm also going to be sending out an email that will have a document attached to it. So you can, again, go over that document. If you happen to have any questions while using the document, please don't hesitate. You can contact our support department. They will be happy to help you out with any of your questions. Perfect. Well, there does not appear to be any questions in today's class, so I do want to thank everybody for attending. I do look forward to speaking with you all again very soon. Thank you very much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.